Welcome back to PlayStation Livecast. I'm here with David Stenton, the producer on Homefront: The Revolution, coming to PS4. David, tell me, what made Crytek want to take on Homefront?
So one of the things that I think really appealed to Crytek back when they acquired the rights in 2012 was the premise of the original game was really strong. So the idea of that kind of dystopian, near-future, occupied USA, that kind of Orwellian, and also turning that kind of established narrative of kind of a special forces soldier, globe-trotting, fighting for the paycheck. It's really turning that established narrative on its head, and people fighting in their own backyards, and fighting for the land and fighting for liberty.
So the first Homefront, a little bit more of a corridor shooter, but I'm really interested in the approach that you guys are taking here with Homefront: The Revolution. Much more open world, a lot of options available to the player. Tell me a little bit about what that's like.
So we at Crytek are really keen on kind of getting back to our own DNA. If you remember kind of games like Far Cry and Crysis, those kind of free roam, sandbox, first-person shooters. And with Homefront, it's definitely an opportunity for us to kind of push that further, to get back to our heritage. And so to that end, we're setting the game in this free roam Philadelphia. And so we're really kind of using the latest version of CryEngine to bring this free roam Philadelphia to life. And that's, a really kind of strong difference, I think, compared to the previous game.
Now we're seeing some gameplay footage here, I presume. It almost looks like a cinematic. Tell me a little bit about, obviously, Crytek, so strong on the technical side. Now you've got PS4, you've got a new generation of hardware on the console side. Tell me about how you guys are evolving CryEngine to handle Homefront: The Revolution.
Yeah, so we're using the absolute bleeding edge version of CryEngine. And we've got quite a sizable R&D team at the Nottingham studio where the majority of Homefront is being developed. And we're working on new features such as real-time day-night cycles, real-time weather. We're really pushing the AI systems. So within this free roam sandbox Philadelphia, we're really kind of pushing the civilian AI and the AI of the KPA, the Korean People's Army, who are the occupying force. So it's very much about kind of setting up this sandbox and allowing the players to kind of sit back and observe the game systems at play. And within this context of a resistance fighter, choosing your opportunities to strike, and really kind of we're really pushing CryEngine to deliver that vision.
And we're seeing that visual fidelity here on display. We're watching this open world vision of Philadelphia. Tell me a little bit about the backstory. Get us caught up a little bit. Obviously, Philadelphia here being occupied by a superior force.
Yeah, so the year's 2029, so it's set 4 years after the events of the first game. And this is a mature occupation. So the KPA are in complete control of the United States. As I mentioned, the game's set is in Philadelphia. And we kind of chose Philadelphia because it's a really iconic location. It's iconic because it's the birthplace of independence. There are several kind of really iconic independence landmarks. Independence Hall, it was the signing of the Declaration, obviously, houses the Liberty Bell. So what better place to set Homefront: The Revolution than Philadelphia? And it's really, like I mentioned, it's a dystopian world, and I think the KPA choosing Philadelphia as their capital city of the occupied United States really shows within this fiction how far America have fallen and how dominant the KPR are within this game world.
Now I know Homefront: The Revolution, it has this open world. It's definitely more of a hit and run approach. It's not, the first title had more of a corridor shooter mentality. So here we're seeing some of that. Looks like throwing a brick to take out a camera. Talk a little bit about, this is a very different approach for this IP. Talk a little bit about just the tools at your disposal. I mean, this is very interesting interactivity.
Yeah, so this game world that we're creating, this occupied Philadelphia, it's inherently a kind of an asymmetric setup. You've got the KPA that are in complete control. They're using far superior technology, far superior firepower. They've got drone technology, watchtowers, checkpoints, all of the kind of the trappings of occupation. And the US civilians, the everyday guys, they've really got nothing. They're kind of scavenging, just trying to get by. Their food's rationed, power's rationed. So within that kind of asymmetric setup, how would you strike back? If you, as an everyday guy, how would you push back against such a an overwhelming superior force, and to that end, you have to use guerrilla tactics. It's the only way that you can strike back, otherwise you'd be completely crushed. So in Homefront: The Revolution, we're really pushing guerrilla warfare. It's really the central pillar of the gameplay. And so to that end, we kind of saw in the footage that you're using guerrilla toolkit items. It's very much about scavenging everyday items and combining them in interesting ways. So we've got items like chemicals, batteries, containers, explosives. And you combine these to create different guerrilla toolkit items. So for example, you can create a radio-controlled car, maybe use that to scout out an enemy location. You can create an improvised explosive device, and maybe you place that on a road to destroy a passing convoy. So your guerrilla toolkit is really the key to push back against the KPA. It's one of the key tools at your disposal.
One of the things, seeing just this footage for the first time, it's so interesting to me is, the outdoor environments are large, but I mean, the incredible density on detail inside. I mean, these interior environments look fantastic. But I also want to point out this cell phone seems to be a very pivotal just tool for the revolution here. Talk a little bit about how this factors in. It looks like there's augmented reality. Talk a little bit about that.
So the cell phone is stolen a KPA cell phone. So as part of the fiction, the everyday US citizens, they aren't allowed to kind of access technology like that. So when you're in the resistance within this Philadelphia, you've got access to this kind of stolen smartphone, and that's augmented with various resistance apps. So you can use it to things like access the world map, access your mission tracker. So because it's a free roam sandbox game, you've got multiple available missions on the go. You've got a camera, so you can scout out enemy locations ahead of time. You can tag KPA enemies and seekers. And then kind of later in the game, as the technology evolves and as your kind of capabilities evolve, you can use that to subvert KPA technology. So this is kind of one of the interesting things that we're doing with the progression in the game. Early on, you're very much under the boot of the KPA. Your tools available are things like bricks and bottles, and you're smashing CCTV cameras, using bolt cutters to get through padlocks, things like that. Later on in the game, you're very much using and subverting the KPA technology, which is where a lot of the smartphone functionality comes in.
Now, we're almost out of time, but I do want to flag, I see these call-outs for other, what I assume are teammates here. Tell me a little bit, is that a multiplayer element? Or?
Yeah, so at E3 we're announcing that we're doing 4-player co-op. This objective that we're seeing here, attacking the police station, is indicative. It's a single-player objective. It's also an objective that you can tackle within the multiplayer co-op game mode. So here we're demonstrating how you and 3 friends can kind of team up to tackle these kinds of sandbox objectives within the open world, and each character kind of taking on their own role. It's really up to you as to how you tackle these objectives as a resistance cell.
Very, very interesting stuff. That's Homefront: The Revolution. When can we look forward to playing this on PS4?
So it'll
PlayStation.
Thought, what is it that we can do to this game to sort of really encompass this guerrilla warfare, and kind of it made sense for us to go open world, and we have now this kind of open environment, this open sort of guerrilla combat on the streets of Philadelphia.
Yeah, you're talking about guerrilla combat. These guys are using everything available to take down their enemy here. This is the scrappy revolution force, so we see a lot of combination, a lot of you're making your own items here, your own weapons.
Yeah. So, I mean, the KPA have basically us Korean People's Army. They're, like I said earlier, they're sort of in full control. And any kind of, they've taken over with their superior technology and their drone presence, and any kind of attempt to go head-on against the KPA sort of always ends badly for the resistance, for the kind of the American fighters who are still sort of trying to push back. So they improvise, and they use these guerrilla tactics to sort of sabotage, infiltrate, ambush their KPA counterparts. And it's these sort of hit and run tactics that we're going to see in this demo, that sort of getting in, striking at the enemy, and then getting out and sort of melting back into the environment before the KPA have sort of had a chance to respond.
So who is our military genius that is in charge of leading this revolution?
Well, you play as Ethan Brady in the story, and he sort of starts off as a everyday sort of regular guy. He's a shop worker, games journalist.
Excellent. Close to home.
Yeah, and as the story progresses, he sort of joins in with the resistance. I don't want to give too much away on the story, but sort of there's a path that he takes through there to kind of instigate this sort of second war of independence.
Wow. So I was just going to say this game is gorgeous, but it's also quite ridiculous. We see somebody here peeing and I guess getting focused
well,
on
I mean, what we're showing here is sort of the open environment of the world, and sort of this is kind of this sort of brutality that we see the KPA sort of they don't really pull their punches. Anyone who kind of steps out of line sort of gets dealt a heavy force back at them. So that's kind of what we're showing here now.
So, I mean, this is the future, but we've also been set a while back in technology in the U.S., I guess, for the Revolution fighters. So what kind of weapons are we going to see here that they're going to be using?
Yeah, so they don't. The Resistance fighters don't have the same access to the technology that the KPA have here, so they're kind of improvised. They end up kind of building their own weapons and sort of looking out for, exploring the environment to find scavenge that they can build and create their own improvised weaponry.
And we've seen some unique elements here. He had his camera out. He was, I guess, casing the joint, checking out what he was going to, how he was going to approach.
I mean, so what we see here, this symbol up at the top here, this is kind of what we call this resistance language. They leave these signs around the world for each other, and you kind of look out for this, and sort of, that's where you can kind of give each other scavenger balls and weaponry. And we saw a brief glimpse there of kind of this uprising going on. So as you kind of chip away at the KPA's sort of stranglehold on the environment, you gain uprising, and as you do that, the world will evolve and react to your sort of presence. So here, this uprising mechanic here that we've implemented.
So that's interesting. Is there, aside from completing the game, completing missions, does that automatically sort of rally people to you?
Yeah, so, I mean, so we call it an evolving Philadelphia. It's a dynamic, evolving world that the player plays in. And at the start of the game, the KPA, like I said earlier, are in full control, and you see that through the actions of the civilians and how people interact with you, and certain gameplay areas aren't available to the player, but as the player kind of gains this uprising mechanic, the world naturally evolves around them, and you'll see the sort of behaviours change differently, but then also as kind of you unlock further levels of uprising, new areas become available to the player. So the world that you see at the start of the game isn't the world you'll see at the end of the game.
That is pretty exciting. So what else am I missing here? We have a huge open world gameplay. We have some incredible weapons that we're going to get a chance to use. He's building something right here, I'm guessing, what he's grabbing off.
Yeah, so here we see the player going into a stash. This has sort of been hidden away, and there's kind of a weapon mod there, which I'll touch more on later. And he's kind of picked up an RC car, which he can kind of use to create these improvised explosive devices, pop them on the RC car, and kind of navigate. I mean, we'll see it in a bit. I don't want to give too much away before we go into it.
That's wonderful. So tell me a little bit about the team that you have working on this game. Where do they come from? What are their influences? And what are you bringing to the game personality-wise?
So the game is based in the Nottingham studio. So there's a lot of ex-Free Radical guys, working Time Splitters guys there. We've also got people in Frankfurt working on it who've sort of come off the Crisis project. So it's a real mix of sort of talents on that.
Do you have a favorite element of the game?
Yeah, I mean I do, but I don't think we've revealed it yet, so I don't want to talk about it too much. But so I think we just touched on it there, this resistance support mechanic, but I don't want to go too much into it. But
yeah, this feels very natural here. That you've got some technology. You see games incorporating this technology that we have today.
Yeah.
So a lot of games you're running around the woods with guns. Well, it would be solved with the cell phone. It would be solved with a text message.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Are we going to have some non-violent solutions here also?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, we want to sort of go back to the heritage, back to the roots of the Crytek sort of brand, and what we've done here, and you can kind of see what we're trying to do here is kind of create these 360 setup scenarios where it's not just about one way to attack attacking a police station here, not just about one way to solve a problem, but you really allow the player to think about how they're going to tackle each one.
So we see here the vehicles coming in.
Yeah, so what we've shown here is so there's an explosion, a distraction has gone off in the distance that the player's been a part of, and that drawing the KPA out of their location. And obviously you can see it's still heavily fortified, so the player can't just charge in their guns blazing as you would in a more traditional shooter.
So that's not an option then, the run and gun.
Well, you could, but you know, we're not encouraging it. By the way, we're balancing the game, so you know, we don't want the player to just be able to charge in guns blazing and sort of do everything, you know, really easily. They've really got to think about how they're going to get to their objective, and that's kind of what we see here with this. We call it the Guerrilla Toolkit. So he's able to build and craft these items from scavenge and then combine them to create kind of interesting and varied scenarios for how they're going to tackle a situation.
All right, this looks like an interesting element here. He's constructed a rolling C4.
Yeah, and basically this sort of the objective is to get a bomb on the door, and yeah, you could go in, you know, shoot everyone up, but chances of success on that are very kind of you know, slight. So it's this hit and run tactics where you've kind of got to use your noggin a little bit about how you're going to get into the scenario. So here we see him using the cover of a vehicle, going in and getting that bomb sort of past the KPA and onto his objective.
I'm sorry, I'm focused on this little guy here. He's gonna make it all the way to the door. There we go. Okay.
Here we go.
So, do you have anybody helping you out in this game? Do you have you know, like a buddy, you know, somebody you want to protect, hang out with?
So I mean that sort of touches on the feature that I sort of hinted at earlier. We have this concept of resistant support. So it's not a specific kind of co-op buddy, I think, in the sense, in the traditional sense of the word. But you can call in kind of resistance that you recruit to help you in certain situations. So here we've kind of shown that he's kind of called in resistance support in his location, but you can kind of call them in to create distractions, to get to come and help you shoot, or to kind of help you blend back into the environment.
So you are their leader. They will follow you to their death if you command. Not quite.
Not quite. Yeah.
Not
Like
quite,
I say, I don't want to give too much of the story away, but yeah, you kind of it's not so much that you're the leader of the resistance and pushing them forward. You're sort of just an everyday guy who's kind of part of this resistance. And we're really keen not to make it that you're this sort of super soldier that's taking on the world, and more you're sort of this, you know, just involved in the resistance.
Almost there.
Without giving too much away.
Without giving too much away. That is the toughest part
Yeah.
of talking about games that are about to come out. Don't give too much away. But without giving too much away, what are you guys planning, you know, once you get everybody in this game, what are they really going to be able to do maybe with each other? Am I going to be able to play with friends at all?
Yeah, so I don't want to go too much into the sort of the multiplayer side of things. We'll talk more about that later, but we are going to support 4-player co-op in this. But that's just a little teaser and no more on that. But here what we can say is the kind of the advanced weapon customization that we've got. So it's kind of creating and crafting these your own weapons on this. So an M4 to start isn't necessarily an M4 at the end of the game.
Dark times here.
So I'd touch a little bit on kind of what we're seeing here. So at the start of the game, the player was inside what we call a yellow zone, which is these sort of police districts, and has these kind of where the KPA have a strong presence, but as you go out and you transition into the environment,